Hello, everyone, and welcome to Week 5 of the OSU Preview. I'm Alex Dusky, and I am joined in the podcast booth by Asa Lucas and Jace Andrews. Guys, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, ready for another great day of college football.
I was going to say, Jace, you look very dapper in that suit and tie. I've never seen you in a suit and tie and white shirt before. I like the sight.
Hey, it's a great day to be a Cowboy.
In the Lilo and Stitch socks, ladies and gentlemen. If only you could see it in the booth.
That's my thing, man. It's my thing.
We'll take a photo and make that the album cover for this week's podcast. So the OSU Cowboys had a bye week last week. So we're going to not start by talking about the Cowboys, but instead talking about the Big 12 Conference. Conference play officially began last week, and man, it was crazy. If you've been listening along to us, you know that we've been doing predictions each week. Last week, Asa and I went 1-2, and we dropped to 4-5 overall. But Jace, you were the winner last week, improving to 4-5 overall with 2 wins and 1 loss.
Listen here, man. I had faith in Texas Tech, and they proved my faith strength. I will say, although I didn't pick them right away, I was the first one to say they would not lose by more than 7, and they, in fact, did not lose at all.
Well done, Jace. Well, I'm as someone who has picked Texas Tech time and time again during the course of this show, I should have gone with them.
Well, I'll say this. I have very, very good faith in their new head coach, Joey McGuire. He was the second head coach ever to beat Texas in his first ever game against them, so he's already starting off on a good foot for them.
Let's start off by talking about that game. It was an overtime thriller. Texas Tech, who was unranked, took down number 22 ranked Texas, who's now out of the rankings. Texas was up 24-14 at half. Texas had a touchdown to tie it, then a 45-yard field goal with 21 seconds to go to take the lead 34-31, thinking they had it in the bag. But no, the Texas Longhorns nailed a 48-yard field goal to tie it. And then, Jace, why don't you tell us what happened in overtime?
Well, Mr. Bijan Robinson, Heisman candidate, decided that he was not going to hold on to the ball. First possession, fumbled it away, and Texas Tech just took it. And they were right there, obviously. 20-yard field goal of Trey Wolf for the win.
Hey, so what are your takeaways from that game?
My takeaways are that Texas is the same team as last year, especially without Quinn Ewers. He was going to be the difference maker. I mean, and you say that time and time again, Texas is back, Texas is back, Texas is back. But until you have a quarterback that doesn't get hurt against Bama, and until you have running back that's not going to fumble in overtime, they're going to struggle. Texas will be lucky to make it to a bowl this year.
I will say I don't like giving Texas credit at all, but I am a man of kickers are people too, and I want to give a big shout out to Burt Auburn. He has a 40-yard field goal in each of the first 4 games, including the 48-yarder to tie it as time expired, to send that game into overtime and give Texas at least a fighting chance. So although Texas didn't win it, I did want to give a shout out to him.
Yeah, I'd say he's the best kicker they've had, even better than Dicker.
Yeah,
I would.
I agree.
The kicker. Moving on to the Kansas Jayhawks. They handedly beat Duke. The final score was 35-27. Duke scored within, I think, the last 2 minutes, so it was a pretty decisive win for Kansas. Jalen Daniels only had 4 incompletions in the game. He finished with 324 total yards and 5 total touchdowns. Asa, what do you think about the Jayhawks being 4-0?
I love watching this. It is so much fun to see an underdog team come out of nowhere and start to shock the world, especially in the Big 12, where it seems like every year there's always one team that shouldn't be as good as they are. And this Kansas Jayhawks team deserves respect. I mean, when you got a guy like Jalen Daniels who plays with his heart out each and every game for this Jayhawks team, he deserves your attention, and Kansas is going to upset some teams in the Big 12 this year.
I agree, and I think the funniest thing ever is that Kansas is always the one who's not favored and then goes and beats Texas. So what if they are favored this time?
And lose to Texas?
Exactly. But it makes the Big 12 so much more interesting because I heard a stat last night that people were trying to talk about saying that the Big 12 was by far the worst conference in the Power 5. And I'm thinking to myself,
Who said that?
The Twitter world, man. They're crazy, the Twitter world. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, the worst team is West Virginia in the Big 12. They could beat any other worst team in any conference even if you want to split them up by divisions, they could still probably beat the worst team in the Pac-12, East or West, whatever. They have two sides, SEC, Big Ten. I think they could beat them all because from top to bottom, the Big 12 doesn't have a bad team.
We were doing hot takes on the Big 12 conference for one of our classes this week. And my hot take was that there is not a bad team in the Big 12. It's always going to be an entertaining matchup. You're always going to be on the edge of your seat watching Big 12 football. And if the season continues like how last week was, I feel like my hot take's going to be pretty accurate.
I'm pretty sure there's a statistic out there talking about that the Big 12 had the best non-conference first 3 weeks of football out there, or were tied at least with the best.
Just going back to last week, there was 3 Big 12 opponents facing non-Big 12 opponents. TCU, they beat SMU, they remain undefeated. Kansas, they beat Duke, they remain undefeated. West Virginia takes down Virginia Tech 33-10. 33-10, that's a big score.
Tech.
On a Thursday night, which is a big game. I mean, enter Sandman. That's going to be popping all night long there.
Moving on to arguably my favorite Big 12 game to watch last week, the OU Kansas State.
Oh, you're not alone. Half of the state of Oklahoma was rejoicing with that, Alex.
Asa, I really thought you were about to make like a pun like, oh, you.
Adrian Martinez, the Kansas State quarterback, a transfer from Nebraska, needed to show off, and boy, did he. He finished with 234 passing yards, 148 rushing yards, 5 total touchdowns, including his very first passing touchdown of the season. K-State jumped to a quick 14-0 lead and never trailed the Sooners in Norman on Saturday night.
What a gutsy performance from Adrian Martinez. He's had experience with OU coming from Nebraska. He's had experience losing to them multiple times, but now he's on a Kansas State team who, as we mentioned with this win, they've won 3 out of the past 4 matchups, and he had the biggest run in the history of, I think, this matchup with his 55-yard run on 3rd and 16 that allowed them to go score the last touchdown that would ultimately be the capper on a 41-34 victory. I just can't say enough about what he did, especially after coming off that Tulane game, which was a not great game for Adrian Martinez or Coach Kleiman.
I'm willing to take my medicine, and I talked about how last week I thought Adrian Martinez was pretty much done. And then playing a physical team like Oklahoma, how he was going to have no chance, and he absolutely proved me wrong. And that's where my one loss came from, is I did not think Adrian Martinez had that dog in him, but he does.
Moving on to this week, Kansas State did move up to number 25 in the nation, and they are playing at home against Texas Tech. And this is one of the games that I picked for our predictions this week. What I'm looking at from afar is that both teams have a lot of confidence and momentum going into this game, having both have upset their teams last week. And although I am not a fan of the color purple, I will be going with K-State. I think they have a lot more to lose than Texas Tech has to gain.
See, this is where the problem comes in with every team being good in the Big 12. I don't know who to pick. First of all, I am going to say I know these matchups are picked weeks in advance and where they're going to be played on TV, but the fact that a Kansas State team that just upset Oklahoma and a Texas Tech team that just upset Texas is on Big 12 Now, ESPN Plus, is kind of like, I mean, I want to watch that game. I mean, obviously, I'm sure you can find a way to get onto account, but I agree with you. I think Kansas State has more to lose than Texas Tech, and Adrian Martinez is now confident.
So is your pick the Wildcats?
Yes.
Okay. Asa?
Well, we will see where everyone ends up going with, but I have to go with the team that has momentum right now. And the way Adrian Martinez is playing at this level, and then you come off a massive win like that, as we're talking about and having things to lose now. I mean, Texas Tech, if they go 8-5, great. That's awesome, and they'll be happy with it. But that's not the same for Kansas State beating Oklahoma. Now they're like 8-5 might not be good enough for us with Adrian Martinez. So I got to go K-State.
All right, the next matchup I picked is the Iowa State Cyclones at Kansas Jayhawks. Did you know that ESPN's Way Too Far Out bowl predictions has Kansas facing Alabama in the Sugar Bowl?
I did see that.
And
that's an accurate take.
Are we in the national championship then? We better be. If they're in the Sugar Bowl. Well, actually, the Sugar Bowl, isn't that a semifinal matchup this year?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I'm going to go with Kansas
Fiesta
on this
Bowl
matchup.
is.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas on this matchup. I really don't have many reasons. Matt Campbell's a good coach, but Kansas has really a solid offense. They can strike from deep. They can dink and dunk you. We saw last week they had an 80-yard touchdown pass, but they also had an 11-play, 75-yard drive that took them down for a touchdown. They can beat you anyway on the offensive side.
I mean, it's hard to beat a team that can dink and dunk you. That's I've never heard that terminology
Really?
before.
That's what everybody says about Tom Brady, as dink and dunk.
The Patriots
And
fans
here we
speaking
go,
up.
the
All right, back to
He's on the box,
Kansas.
man. I was just quoting.
Hey, so who are you going with?
Mr. Daniels, Jalen Daniels, getting it done. He's going to continue to get it done. Iowa State is a competitive program in the Big 12, but I don't think their defense is fast enough to keep up with this dual-threat quarterback.
Jace, you kind of hinted at it, but in my notes, word for word, I said, why wouldn't you pick Kansas in this game? So I'm going with the Jayhawks this week.
There's no reason to not to at this point.
The final matchup I want to talk about is the now number 18th ranked OU at TCU. My thoughts are that OU needs to win this game to save the little dignity they have left. And while I do love the Horned Frogs, I think it's a great mascot. I love seeing him on TikTok. I think OU will win, and I think they'll win big.
It looks like it's going to have to come down to you to pick something different, Jace, because I'm going with Oklahoma.
Good thing I'm going with TCU then.
Whoa!
TCU beat Colorado 38-13. Tarleton, obviously a lesser team, 59-17, and they beat SMU, who was a decent team, 42-34 on the road in quotation marks because it's literally right down the road.
You think Max Duggan can get it done against a wounded Oklahoma team?
Listen, here's all I say. I had a thought in my head that if y'all both picked Oklahoma, I was going to go TCU. That's why I had you go first.
Okay.
Because I do believe in Max Duggan, and they've done upsets like this before. Last year, they defeated Baylor at home in a week just similar like this. So I'm not going to say that, oh, yeah, I'm guaranteeing that to happen. That's my, super dog, as they call it in College Game Day, where they'll cover the spread and all that. But I think they have a shot, and I think people aren't giving enough credit to how actually good TCU is. Obviously, Colorado, not a good team. Tarleton, not a good team. SMU's pretty decent, and they scored 42 on them. At worst, I think this is going to be a shootout, and TCU loses by 10.
All right. Do you guys have anything else you want to say before we move on about the Big 12?
I think we got a pretty important game, so I'm ready to move on.
I know this game has a lot on the line, not only for Oklahoma State, but for some of us in the booth. So, yes, let's get into it.
So before we talk about that game, I just had a couple sports news questions, I guess you can say. We've talked about the Nebraska coach, Scott Frost, getting fired a couple weeks ago. The original reports were that the Huskers were going after Matt Campbell, the current Iowa State coach, but now Nebraska is quote-unquote going all in on Dave Aranda from Baylor, and Baylor sources are saying that Aranda would say yes. What are your thoughts on that?
Really?
Man, I mean, in my opinion, take him. Go ahead, because Baylor is such a up and down team, and when they lose a coach, the next year they go 0-12. That's what's happened the past couple times. And if you take him out, I mean, it's us in Oklahoma and Texas, and Quinn Ewers ain't going to be here for too much longer, including Texas and Oklahoma leaving next year.
Yeah. Asa, what are your thoughts on that?
I am disappointed in Mr. Aranda. I thought he was going to build this program at Baylor and have it be consistent. And who wants to take that Nebraska job with such a hot seat?
But what the reports are saying is that Nebraska is willing to pay Aranda however much he's wanting.
Here's the thing that
I'm not quite sure where they're getting that money from, unless it's the volleyball championships that they've won.
Plenty of boosters who have money out in Nebraska.
Boosters, but I think the ultimate thing that would keep Aranda at Baylor is the past two coaches to leave Baylor have not been very successful. Obviously, Art Briles was forced to leave, and he's coaching high school now due to other circumstances. But Matt Rule did an amazing job with Baylor, went to the NFL, thought that was his calling. He's on the hot seat right now. He probably won't be with the Carolina Panthers next year. And so I think if there's anything to keep him there is understanding that he has a lot of power there.
Another quick coach question. Herm Edwards from Arizona State fired. There have been rumors that assistants were giving opponents Edwards' play ideas for that game to get Arizona losing to get Edwards fired. Do you think Mike Gundy got any insight from their assistants when we faced the Sun Devils a couple weeks ago?
I like to think Mike Gundy is a good old-fashioned Okie boy, and he would not take that information.
Listen, the way he
Do you think it was offered? Do you believe the rumors?
in this day and age of college football, especially with such low-brow play as Pac-12 football is, I would say it was probably offer, or there was a acknowledgement of an offer.
Okay, Jace?
I'll say this. The way Coach Media kind of talks to Gundy, and the way Gundy talks back to them, I'm pretty sure the only people he talks to is his team, his son, who is also on his team, his other sons, and his family around him. I really don't think he would accept information. I think he probably got it offered just because, in my opinion, that Arizona State situation is so not trustworthy. Just because I know he was fired on the field, which is already bad.
You mentioned Coach Gundy not really talking to anyone else. I do want to throw it out there that Jace and I went to Boone Pickens to film his stand-up yesterday, and who did we see? Coach Gundy jogging, long sleeve, long pants, headphones on. He was in the zone, but he did smile and wave at us.
How has that affected your image of Mike Gundy?
Listen,
He's very focused on his run.
I was about to say we could stop him, but I feel like that would be so rude. And he's
don't
just
want to get on his bad side.
No one-armed push-ups.
No.
While he was jogging.
Oh, I should have just gotten down and done one. I wonder what he would have done.
Can you, Jace?
I mean, I could sure try.
All right,
I can do
moving
one.
in to today's game against the Baylor Bears. Cowboys are in Waco. Looking at the rankings, Asa, as you said, there's a lot on the line for both teams. OSU stayed at number 9. Baylor moved up to number 16. This is the Cowboys' first road game and first conference matchup, and I don't think we can talk about this game without mentioning the last time the two teams met in AT&T Stadium. I know it's heartbreaking.
Do we have to?
Now that game, I think has been a little bit worse for me than the Central Michigan game, because there is so much more what if we could have done differently, and why was there never a quarterback sneak?
This is my thing about that game. I think the Cowboys losing the Big 12 championship, getting out of the playoffs, and going to Fiesta Bowl and having that historic win in such a historic bowl game was so much better than them, say, getting the 4th seed and getting crushed by Georgia or Alabama.
But who knows, Alex? Maybe we could have beat Georgia.
Maybe.
This is probably just my Big 12 history and knowing how much the CFP loves the Big 12. They do not. I think we would have just been in the same position that Baylor was. We would have gone and played Ole Miss. And in my opinion, we would have beat them a lot bigger than Baylor did.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
I think I agree with Alex. I would take the Notre Dame victory over most anything. I will say, if we got into the CFP, that would just be something incredible that I don't think I could turn down.
In a Big 12 championship to show
Correct.
Mike Gundy's stewardship of this
But
program.
I still think a Fiesta Bowl win.
Hey, it's
kinda
okay.
trumps that.
We're just going to get that Big 12 championship this year.
We'll repeat. Looking at the Baylor Bears last week, we kind of hinted at it. They were in Ames. They were up 31-14 at the start of the 4th quarter. They have a second-year starter in Blake Shapen at quarterback. However, it's important to note that they lost their main running back in Treston Ebner and receiver in Tyquan Thornton. Taking a look at Blake Shapen in the Big 12 championship, he had 17 straight completions against the
I remember
Cowboys.
that. I remember seeing that stat. That has not left me since December.
What are your guys' thoughts on the Bears' offense?
Shapen, I will say he's a loose second-year starter because he only started one game last year, and it was the Sugar Bowl, and it was kind of a flippy-floppy situation with him and Gary Bohannon. He's good. Very nerved. It seemed like he's had a bunch of nerves this year. So I don't know how that's going to affect him.
Kind of like a flip of the calmness we're seeing in Spencer Sanders.
Correct. I kind of see maybe we'll see a 3-interception game from Blake Shapen. I will say, to replace the running back of Tristan Ebner, they have a true freshman, Richard Reese, who on the depth chart in the first game was a 3rd string. Now he has the most rushing attempts and almost double the amount of yards as the next highest guy, 315 on 55 attempts. And he has a 52-yard long with 6 touchdowns. So they've replaced him really well. Receivers are hit or miss. I think Oklahoma State's receivers are far and above Baylor's.
What I've taken away from Baylor is going back to watching that BYU game. BYU not only played with a chip on their shoulder, but they kind of showed that Baylor cannot beat you with the run. They have to pass. So I think that gives me and the Oklahoma State defensive coordinators an idea of, okay, they're going to have to spread it. Otherwise, they cannot beat us in the trenches, because people thought Baylor coming into this season with how big their offensive and defensive lines are is that they're just going to be able to manhandle whoever they want.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think Baylor before the season was getting compared to a Wisconsin type team.
No, you're correct.
Where it was offensive line minded, and we're just going to run and run and run, and you're not going to be able to stop us.
And I dare to say that the Oklahoma State front four is better and tougher than the BYU front four that they faced in Provo.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Looking at the Bears on defense, they did lose some big guys. However, defensive tackle Siaki Ika is back. Looking at that Big 12 championship game, he had 4 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a half sack. So he definitely caused some issues for Spencer and the Cowboys. What do you guys see from the Bears' defense?
It's really good. They got a lot of very talented people. Al Walcott, the safety, has been really their main guy. He's had 2 pass deflections, 23 total tackles, although 14 of them being assisted. But they've got a bunch of big guys on the defensive line. T.J. Franklin's name's one of them. Gabe Hall, Bradley Utley. They're all very large guys. And so I'm interested to see, because this will be Oklahoma State's first test on their offensive lines front, how they can protect Spencer. Because we've seen before, if Spencer starts getting pressured, he tends to get rattled.
We're going to talk about Spencer in the Baylor series, but Ace, I want to hear your thoughts on defense.
This is the best defense we've faced so far. I won't say it will be the best defense we're playing all season, but this is definitely top 5 defenses we're going to see. And I know this is a team that can capitalize on turnovers. So if Spencer makes some bad decisions and bad throws, you're not going to see tip drill drops. You're going to see interceptions.
So we kind of hinted at it. You made the mention of the interceptions. Spencer Sanders has historically had problems with the Bears just throwing interceptions. You know, we still won the regular season last game when he had, what, three interceptions? Yeah. How do you think we've kind of seen a different change in Spencer, a different change in demeanor, more calm, less easily rattled? How do you think he is going into this Baylor game?
You know, there's a lot of things I could say about Spencer and what he's done this year, and I think the first word that comes to mind is trustworthy. He's been right there for every guy, including his teammates, just kind of helping him out, and he's also been on point with his passes, his understanding, his football knowledge. He's read routes perfectly. He's only had the 1 interception against Arizona State. I know he didn't play a lot in the Pine Bluff game, but I don't expect an interception in that game. I really think we'll see a different Spencer. The only thing that makes me concerned is that if this was in Boone Pickens, I would have a lot higher confidence, just because it's going to be it's a 2:30 game, not a night game, which makes it a little better, but it's going to be packed, and it's going to be hot as well. That turf will get very, very, very warm.
Spencer Sanders coming into this game, I think he's similar to the mindset I have when I go home for Christmas and see my grandma. Is you're very aware of your faults and your shortcomings. You know that's going to come up. It's like, do you have a job yet? Do you have a girlfriend yet? Are you married yet? So Spencer Sanders knows his history, and he understands what has happened to him and all these turnovers and mistakes that come against Baylor. So I think he's very conscious and aware of this game.
Mm-hmm. Correct. And I think the bright side of this all is that last time he played in Waco, it was a 42-3 victory where he threw for over 300 yards. Still had 2 interceptions.
You mentioned how it's going to be loud and it's going to be packed. Oklahoma State sold out the Arkansas Pine Bluff game. They sold out Texas, which is America's greatest homecoming, and Texas Tech is nearly sold out. Baylor is selling tickets for $50 for this game this weekend.
Well, yeah, I didn't say...
Why are the Baylor faithful not...
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying, if Oklahoma State's able to sell out an FCS school, why can't Baylor sell out this matchup?
I didn't say it'd be a sellout and mostly Baylor fans there.
I'm not correcting you. I'm just
What
wondering.
is the stadium size?
It's pretty large. I don't have an exact number on it, but... It's a big stadium. There's 3 decks.
Okay. And I saw they had renovations years ago.
Correct. So this is
45,000. So it's 10,000 smaller than
okay.
McLean Stadium is relatively new though, because it was opened in 2014, and it can get loud. But luckily, they have an opening on the I believe the west end zone or the south end zone. I don't know. One of the end zones is opening, whereas Oklahoma State has the wall that bounces it off with Gallagher-Iba. Mm-hmm. So the sound will at least have an area to get out.
Okay.
But they can get loud.
Okay, it is time for everyone's favorite part of the podcast, prediction time. Now, I don't know about you guys, but the spread earlier this week that I looked at, Baylor was favored by 2.5. It is now 2. So
nice.
They're getting nervous.
They said Spencer was healthy and was like, what?
The over-under is 56.5, and Baylor has a 65.3% chance of winning. Asa, I'll let you go first with your predictions.
This will not be a surprise with what I'm going to say. Oklahoma State's coming away with a win on the road, and a good win, a very good win. I'm saying 38-24. Spencer Sanders will have one interception.
Okay.
He's going to have 2 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown, and Dominic Richardson's going to get it done inside the end zone.
Jace?
This game is tough because I'm going to pick Oklahoma State, first of all. They're my pick. But it's just hard knowing what to expect from a Spencer Sanders who historically has had a tough time in this game. But what I've seen this year, it's just like what I've said with Kansas. I have no reason not to bet on him. So I'm betting on him, and I'm betting on him big. 42, Oklahoma State, Baylor, 21.
Wow.
Oklahoma State wins by 21 points, 3 touchdowns, and I agree. I think Dominic will get it done inside the sticks. I think Spencer will have a lot of passing yards.
Oh, yeah.
But hot take here, Dominic goes for 3 touchdowns.
Ooh.
I know it's tough, but
I like it.
Well, we'll have
or at least a running back. I'll say that.
Oh, no,
but
no. You can't clarify that. You
Okay.
said Dominic Richardson.
I trust you, Dom. I trust you. To be fair, he scored one of the rushing touchdowns in the Big 12 championship.
He did.
So
For our prediction game, we'll only be looking at numbers, but just for fun, next week we can look at your guys' player and yardage predictions. My score prediction is kind of similar, kind of different. It's going to be a high-scoring game like you guys both said. However, I have it closer. I think it's going to be back and forth, but OSU's going to come away in the fourth quarter. I think they'll probably be down going into the fourth, but we'll be able to come away with it. I have OSU winning 42-38.
I don't like being down in the fourth quarter to Baylor.
Absolutely.
That never works well.
That's unfortunately what I'm predicting.
Ugh. Well, never. To be fair, a couple years ago, being up wasn't also good as well. So,
Ouch.
yeah, it is tough, but it's a good game. I will say this: taking away my bias from being, an Oklahoma State fan, this is an amazing college football game.
I'm
This is one
upset
that
game day did not come.
Why
on earth go to Clemson, NC State?
It just makes
over
me
the Big 12 championship.
It just makes me a
redo.
little more upset that Wake Forest couldn't pull that upset off, because then I know they would have come to our game. But I'll take
Fine,
what it
they
is.
didn't come to Bedlam last year, and we showed them. So.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes, we did.
Hey, that's true. Game day did not come last year and won, so maybe they'll do the same thing this year.
I bet they'll be here for homecoming, though.
Ooh.
Even with an unranked Texas,
I was
I
about to
think
say,
they would come here still.
Well, especially if that's Quinn Ewer's first game back,
Yep.
and especially since the history of homecoming in Texas.
We're speaking it into existence. Game day, if you're listeting, please come to Stillwater on October 22nd.
Can you
Yeah.
let Mr. Andrews be a guest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll wear my suit again, I promise. Get an orange tie for y'all.
I would just love to see them put on Pistol Pete's head.
Well, see.
Could he lift that up?
So
Oh, wait, Jace? Yes, Jace could lift
So
it up.
in history, when he has put on the head, it's been interesting because Kirk has had to hold the head up on
for
him.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, that head is going to fall back
off
and
on him.
take his head straight off the chair. I think one of the helpers does go up there with him and try and make sure he's safe with it. But I would love to see that again, I will say.
All right, well, that'll do it for the OSU Preview podcast this week. The Cowboys will take the field in Waco at 2:30 today on Fox, so make sure you turn your TVs to that. Thank you for tuning in to the OSU Preview podcast. I'm Alex, joined by Asa and Jace, and
Go Pokes!